We are today with Professor Aharon Geva-Kleinberger, who is a dialectologist, an expert in dialects of the Arabic words, especially in the realm of Palestinian dialects. And he has studied many languages, between them English, Arabic, German, French, Aramaic, between many others, and also Hebrew and Yiddish.
Yes.
Now you are an Ashkenazi guy. How is it that you speak Arabic and you specialize into Arabic dialects?
I grew up in Haifa, and in Haifa there are many. The population is mixed between Arabs and Jews, and they were neighbors. And I was very interested to know the language. And also my father, he had the workers, and once in one summer I was working with the Arab workers, and they made an experiment on me, and they wanted to speak with me only in Arabic. After this summer, I was 12 years old, I knew Arabic, after one summer.
But you have a gift, I think, to know and study so many languages. How did it happen?
I think that I revealed it when my sister studied at the university the Akkadic language, which is a very ancient language, and she had a task, and I was only 9 years old, and she didn't know how to translate the text in Akkadian, and she didn't know what to do. And I said to her, let's see what we can do. And that's what happened. I tried to read it, the text, and on the spot I understood what it's written there, and she got a very high mark in the university. So at that point I understood that I love languages.
So, but then you were 12 and you were speaking Arabic with the workers.
Yes.
And then what happened?
And then what happened? I had to study Arabic in school, but I didn't have anything to learn because I knew more than the teacher knew. So I was a little bit bored. Afterwards, I learned also in schools in French, Arabic, English, Hebrew, and then I decided to study my PhD in Germany, and there I studied also other languages, Middle Eastern languages, modern languages, and also ancient languages. And I wrote my PhD in the German language. Before I didn't know any German, I knew only Yiddish. But I thought at first that Yiddish might be a dialect of German language, but it's not like that. It's no. Very far away, and you cannot write a dissertation in German if you know only Yiddish, because it's too far away. So I had to, and when you had to write something in another language, you have to learn it very deeply.
But the ancient languages like Aramaic and Akkadian or
yes.
whatever,
yes.
How did you learn all this?
I had to learn it in the frame of my PhD, so I studied to learn it. But surprisingly enough, there are many languages like Aramaic that we think that they are dead, totally dead, only the language of the Talmud or the Gemara. But you find hundreds of thousands of people today that their mother tongue are Aramaic in Europe. In Europe, but they originate from the northern parts of Syria, the southern parts of Turkey, the northern parts of Iraq, and the western parts of Iran. and they used to speak Aramaic, most of them Christian people, until 20, 30 years ago. And then they immigrated to Europe, and today you can find in the Netherlands or in Germany or even in Sweden TV broadcasting in Aramaic, which is still a living language. But the problem is what will be in the future, because the new generation, the children in Europe, when people leave the place that they were born, they gradually do not speak the original language, and the children do not want to speak with the parents. You know it. So it's very sad, because those languages were vivid for many, many hundreds of years, and we witness nowadays the death of many languages in these very days.
Yes, you were telling me how many languages there were some years ago, and,
yes.
and
yes.
how many languages there are today.
Yes, today there are approximately 6,000 languages around the world, but each week one language dies out. So it means that in 1 year more than 50 languages disappear, as if they have never been existing in this world. It's very sad, because 100 years ago there were more than 10,000 languages, and in 50 years we will have only maybe 2,000 or 3,000 languages. And it's not only the language, it's the death of culture and the death of knowledge for the whole mankind, for all humanity. Because tribes in Brazil, they do not speak only the language, they know also the secrets of plants that they can use for medicine. Each language has its own secrets, and the death of a language is the death of a long, very long culture. So it's very pity. That's what happened also to Jews in many countries around the world, also in Arab countries. They left Syria. They were living in Syria, for example, for more than 3,000 years. They had a very long tradition in Arabic. And when they left Syria, they didn't leave only the language, they left also the culture. And it's very sad, because they used to pray even in Arabic.
Yes.
And they had books of prayers in Arabic.
Yes.
And they used proverbs in Arabic. And it's also sad, but it's a worldwide phenomenon. Today, children around the world do not use any more proverbs. Even in Spanish, children, they do not know the local proverbs anymore. The parents know the local proverbs. The grandfathers used to use them a lot, but the children do not know even 10% of them. And this is a phenomenon around the world. So there are many things that we lamentably forget, and it's against the future of all mankind. This is very pity.
Yes, because the proverbs have the wisdom.
Yes, the proverb has the wisdom. Yes,
of the people.
Yes, I always ask my students, which one has a more rich language, the farmer or a person that goes to the university? And they normally say, the person, the intellectuals, they have a very wide lexicon, very wide vocabulary. But it's not like that, because the farmers, they have names for each kind of animal, for each period of the life of the animals, for the fruits, for how to grow fruits and vegetables. So they know much more, and they know even other things that we do not know. For example, how to predict the weather. And there are many proverbs also around the world that predict the weather, but only the farmers, they know it. So this is very sad that today we see the death of languages, the death of dialects, the death of cultures. We do not want, if we go abroad, to see the same mall. If you go to a very interesting place in the world, you want to see another culture. You don't want to see the same clothes in the same mall, and you want to see something else. And you want to see also and to hear another language, because the language is the culture.
Of course. And what about like Yiddish? What about Ladino? And are there going to be extinct?
Yiddish? No, by no means. Because there are many Orthodox Jews, especially in Israel and the United States, that still speak this language and preserve the language. So
and
they preserve, yes, and also in Mexico, they preserve the language. Ladino is another case. Ladino is under danger. Yes, it's going to be distinct in the very few years. So it will not be a vivid language. Maybe because there were books, there are books on Ladino. People can learn Ladino, but it's not a vivid language.
Why?
Because you don't find people that still use it, or young generation that still use it. There is a definition in the world which is called language cloud. Language cloud. It means we want to see how vivid a language is in the world. For example, if the parents do not tell stories before to their children before they go to sleep in their language, it's not a very vivid language. If you cannot, if a child doesn't use the language of his parents in school, it's not a vivid language. If he has to go to school and to learn the formal language and not to use the language of his parents, it's not a vivid language. So there are many languages also in the Near East, in the Middle East, like languages that were still vivid until 30 years ago in the southern parts of Yemen, of the Arabian Peninsula, in Yemen, Oman, and in Saudi Arabia, that were very vivid until 30 years ago. But today, these tribes that used to use modern South Arabian languages, which is not Arabic. Arabian is not Arabic. Arabian is geographically belonging to the Arabian Peninsula. They used to speak very ancient languages, but today they adopted Islam and they use Arabic as the holy language of the Quran. And they didn't have a tradition to write down their language, so they pray in Arabic and forget the ancient language, which was there more than 3,000 years old. So this happens in many cases around the world.
And what about the Jews, the Arab Jews? Did they have dialects, special dialects between them?
Sometimes they had their own dialects. as a very known case of the dialect of the Jews of Baghdad, because in Baghdad, they had their own dialect. It was not like the dialect of the Muslims, or it was not like the Arabic dialect of the Christians of Baghdad. It was a very ancient dialect that was even more ancient than the dialect of the Muslims. They used to speak Arabic even before the Muslims came to Baghdad. So, but in some other places, like in Lebanon, the Jews used to speak the same dialects of the other population, as you know. But in Syria, the dialects were very near to the dialect of the non-Jewish populations, but they used to use also proverbs in Hebrew and some words in Hebrew, and they had their own holidays, and they used the special vocabulary of the holidays. So, and there were some words that were very unique to the Jews, and the other population didn't use them.
And so how does a dialect, how is a dialect born inside a language?
When the Arabs, they came from Central Arabia. When they conquered Egypt, they heard also the Coptic language, and with the time the Coptic and Arabic mixed, and in such a way was born the Egyptian dialect. When the Arabs came to the northern parts of Africa, they found there the Berber language. And the Berber language mixing with Arabic created the dialects of northern Africa. When they came to Syria, the Arabs found their Aramaic. So the mixture between Aramaic and Arabic, this created the dialects of Syria, Lebanon, and the Holy Land of that time. And when they came to the region of Iraq, there were other languages over there. So the mixture between Arabic and the languages that there were over there created the languages that, the dialects that we can find today in that place, in these places.
And sometimes in the same country there are dialects, different dialects between two cities, like in the Jewish population of Aleppo and Damascus, there is a different dialect. How can that be?
It takes 4 to 5 hours with a car or with a bus between Damascus and Aleppo. The Jews that came to Aleppo, some of them came after the Jews were expelled from Spain in 1492. So some of them are of Sephardic origin. Others came from Greece and Bulgaria. And even some Ashkenazi Jews came to Aleppo. And it was a very closed community in Aleppo. Today, you can find Aleppo and Damascus in the same country, Syria. But in the past, it was a region. It was not Syria. It was Syria and Lebanon and the Holy Land. So it doesn't mean that these two dialects have to be very near because they are nowadays in Syria, because the region was very big at that time. And even Jews came to Aleppo from the southern parts of Turkey. Some of them came from villages in southern Turkey of today. So a very special dialect was created in Aleppo, while Damascus was in the south, and it was another part geographically of the region. So this explains why there are differences between these two dialects of the Jews of Damascus and the Jews of Aleppo.
Wow, and what about Arabic all over Israel? Are there different dialects and
Yes.
also in Palestinian dialects?
Yes. 2 years ago, a colleague of mine, Peter Benstedt, a German scholar who lives in Spain today, and me, we wrote together an atlas of the Arabic dialects of the region of Galilee in northern Israel.
Just for
the region
How
of
many
Galilee,
are
and in this region, you can find hundreds of dialects, because in the past there were no roads. If you pave a road, then one person can reach another part of the region simply. In the past it was not like that. Two villages were without road, and they didn't see each other a lot, and therefore the dialects were very closed, yes. And it's funny because if you go to some villages in Galilee, if you ask the elderly population how you explain the difference between this village and the very neighboring village, and they tell you something very funny anthropologically. They say, we used to drink the water of our wells, and they used to drink the water of their wells. The water of their wells was more salty than our water. And because of the salty water of this village, their dialect is more rough, and their behavior is more rough. So this is anthropologically, but it's not the truth. But elderly people tend to explain such a phenomena in this way, you know, based on the water that you drink.
Wow, it is amazing.
Yes.
Yes. And you have been investigating all kind of dialects in Israel?
Yes, only in the region of Galilee. I visited all the villages, all the towns, and I made interviews, hundreds of interviews, I filled hundreds of questionnaires, linguistic questionnaires. It takes time, and then you have to analyze the material. It takes time, and then you have to put it into maps, linguistic maps, dialectological maps. It takes time. But then, if you do not do it, in 10 years, the whole map changes. The map changes, the culture changes, the language changes, everything.
And
so it's very important that we do it, because if we do not do it, it may disappear as if it was never there. You understand what I mean?
Yes.
Because if you do not document things, they disappear.
And you did this at the same time you were responsible for the Arabic language radio.
I was working for 6 years in the Israeli broadcasting in Arabic.
And you were also teaching in the University of Haifa?
Yes, I was also teaching at the university. I still teach at the University of Haifa. I was the head of the department until 2 years ago, for 5 years. Today I'm... And
you were also a member of the Academy, the Arab Academy of Israel?
Yes, the Arab a language academy in Israel. I'm the only Jewish member.
And how do you feel about this, about being the only Jewish member?
I feel sad because the Arab population of Israel, most of them know Hebrew very well, while the Jewish population of Israel, they do not know Arabic very well. They just speak words here and there, but they do not have any command of the language. Israel is located in the Middle East. Israel has to understand that if it wants to be a part of the Middle East, it has to speak also Arabic very well. Because if the Jews in Israel will not speak Arabic very well, they will not understand their neighbors very well, and the neighbors will not try to get nearer to them. They have to learn the language. They must.
Do you think if the leaders spoke Arabic, they would have a better,
I'm sure about it.
A better solution for
yes,
this?
I am sure about it. That's what happened recently with Morocco. The Jews of Morocco, they have a very good command of the local dialect of Morocco. And this helps them very well to have good relations with the government, good relations with the people of Morocco. So language is not language, as I told you before. Language is culture, language is neighbors.
And while you were going all around Israel and studying all the dialects, I'm sure you had a lot of experiences with people, with people and with talking with people, because you speak Arabic, as I understand very well. What is one of these experiences that were very important to you, like marked you, like a turning point for you in all this career of studying languages?
Many Arabs, elderly Arabs, and even the young generation, they tell me, we really admire what you do. You do what we have to do, but we don't do. So you do more than we are supposed to do, and what we are really doing in order to preserve the dialects and the culture. Dialects are not only language, it's also ancient traditions, and if you do not document them, they will disappear.
Do you think the Arabic culture is disappearing in Israel because it's not kept, it's not taken care of?
20 years ago, when I made my interviews, the people used only very few Hebrew words in their speech. But today, if you make interviews in Israel, the Arab population of Israel, they mix Hebrew so intensively in their speech that you cannot imagine. So it's only within 20 years or the last 20 years. So what will happen in the next 20 years, only God knows.
Because sometimes we see like in the Netflix series Fauda.
Yes.
That this guy, an Israeli, goes to the territories and he speaks Arabic and as if he was born there.
Yes.
Is it possible?
Yes, I think so.
Yes?
I think so. Fauda is a very good series because they pay attention for the dialects, really. So it's very vivid and very authentic. So this is one of the things that makes this series very successful.
And it is written by Avi Sakharov, no?
I think so.
Yes.
Yes.
That is also Ashkenazi.
Yes.
But he knows how to talk about this.
Yes.
And now you are going to speak in Arabic.
Okay.
Let's see. What proverbs do you know in Arabic that you like?
خد لك شامية نام نومة هنية.
Which means?
If you marry a Damascus girl, so you can sleep very well during the night. But if you say it, the people of Aleppo will say, no, we say it about Aleppo, about Halab.
And another one?
There are so many proverbs that you cannot imagine. Some of them are still in use and some die out. اسأل عن الجار قبل الدار وعن الرفيق قبل الطريق.
It's nice. Ask about
the neighbor before you buy a new house, and about the guide before you go to travel.
What about the Jewish communities? You have been all around the world and their dialects.
Yes, I've been documenting Jewish dialects and communities that are under danger around the world, as in the Far East, in India, in Singapore, in Myanmar, even in other places in the Far East, and also Jewish communities in Yemen, in Syria and Lebanon in the recent years, and even the dialect of the Jews of Sudan. Not many people know that there were also Jews in Sudan that were speaking Arabic. Some of them came before 1886 to Sudan, and others came in the 20s of the 20th century from Alexandria in Egypt, but there was also a community over there. So there were many Jewish communities in Arab countries that disappeared, and with them also the culture of these communities, because some of the communities didn't have written Arabic, only oral Arabic and oral traditions. So if you do not document the oral traditions, they disappear, unfortunately.
And where is all that work? Where is it compiled?
Some of them in books and some of them in articles. Yes.
And in the museums, do they have a special place where they talk about languages?
Not normally. Not normally.
Of the Jews?
Not normally.
Because it's amazing that I didn't know about the languages of the Jews in all the...
It's a good idea for the future to have such a museum around the world, the Museum of the Languages of the Jewish communities around the world.
I think it's important.
Yes, yes.
How was the reaction of the Arabs of Israel?
They can react in many ways. Normally they react very positively. I think that the Jews in Latin America and also in the United States that came from Arab countries, they have to save their tradition before it disappears totally. They have to pay attention to the elderly grandfathers and grandmothers, and to write down their stories, to write down their memories, to write down their knowledge before everything disappears, because if they die, everything will die with them.
It's true.
Yes, and it's high time. It's high time also that a museum, not only in the United States, but a very big museum for the traditions of the Jews of Arab countries will be will be built in the future, in the near future.
And do you think...
As we have, for example, for the memories of the Shoah. It's not the same, the Shoah and these memories, but these are memories.
Yes, it's an important part of
and
the past.
And Jews used to live in Arab countries for 2,000 years, 3,000 years in Muslim environment, and they have so much knowledge. It's pity that it will disappear. And this, as normally I say, if we do not document it, one day somebody can say it didn't exist. It didn't exist.
Do you think that the Arab Jews have been neglected somehow?
I think that they have to do very important steps before everything disappears. They have to be more active in that. To have a museum, one museum around the world that will have all the information about the Jews of Arab countries. I think that maybe Mexico is a very good place, why not? You have to make the interviews to record the grandfather and grandmothers in Arabic and not in Spanish, because they have better ability to speak about their memories in the language that they spoke first. Because one day somebody will say they were not speaking Arabic, they were not intermingled in our traditions, in the life of the countries. They were just like colonialists for few years and then left. It's not good.